Could the 76ers look to trade Paul George this offseason after just 1 year with the team? According to a report, there's a chance that some people in the Sixers building might be trying to get off of Paul George's contract this offseason. Plus, Daryl Morey, is he using AI to run the 76ers? I'm not talking about Allen Iverson. I'm talking about artificial intelligence. He had some interesting things to say the other day about using AI models to make decisions in the front office. We're going to get into both of these heavy topics here on today's 76ers. Now, let's get right into it with a potential Paul George trade. Could we see Paul George traded as soon as this off season? There is a new report that has come out from Hoops Hype that the Sixers will indeed try to trade Paul George this summer after apparently there was some interest in trading him at the deadline. Some members of the Sixers front office wanted to get off of Paul George at this year's NBA trade deadline. There were some interested teams as well, and they could potentially be looking to move him this summer. Before we get into that report, I want you all to be honest with me right now, and I think I might know how a lot of you stand on this topic. If you want the Sixers to trade Paul George this summer, hit that thumbs up icon, like the video. I want to see how many of you are on the boat of trading Paul George. If not, if you want to keep him, that's fine as well, but let me know why down in the comments section. So here is that report on Paul George coming from Ashish Marther of Hoops Wire. The Philadelphia 76ers will try to trade small forward Paul George this summer. An NBA source told Hoops Wire George has struggled in his first season with the Sixers after signing a lucrative 4-year, $211 million contract with the franchise in July. Look, you know where I stand if you've been tuning in on 76ers Now on Paul George. My stance has always been, if you can trade Paul George, you absolutely do it. He did not live up to the expectations and to that contract this season. The problem is, can you find a team that wants to take on Paul George? Now, there's a few reasons why I think trading Paul George makes a lot of sense. And for starters, the injury history, right? Throughout his career, he's dealt with a lot of injuries, and this season, it has been no different. If you haven't been caught up on the latest going on with Paul George, Sam Sharani reported the other day that Paul George and the Sixers are consulting with doctors on treatment for both his knee and his groin. They're expected to make a decision on a move forward early next week, and surgery and a potential procedure is in play, meaning Paul George could definitely be shut down for the year. And he's dealt with a few different kinds of injuries this season. Going back to the preseason, before the season even began, Paul George suffered 2 left knee hyperextensions that caused him to miss time at the beginning of the year. Then around January, started dealing with an injury to his left pinky finger, dealt with left groin soreness, and now that knee is starting to bother him again. He really hasn't been healthy at all this year, and that was a concern when you're bringing in a player who I believe is now 34 years old in Paul George, who has always had injury history his entire career, going back to Indiana. OKC, he was relatively healthy, but then even with the Clippers, he was dealing with injuries here and there. He just never seems to be able to stay healthy for a full season. But it's not just the injuries. When he's been on the court, he hasn't been the player that you're paying $50+ million for, that all-star level guy. Just 16, 5, and 4, shooting just 43% from the field and under 36% from 3, when he's been a guy always shooting nearly 40% from 3. And a lot of times, he's not aggressive enough, he's not assertive enough, hasn't been that secondary star you hoped could carry this offense when Joel Embiid misses games. And then, of course, there's the contract, right? After this season, Paul George will be under contract for 3 more years at $51 million, $54 million, and $56 million. Look, the Sixers knew when they signed him to this deal, the idea was to maximize the first year or two before he gets older and that price starts going up. Obviously, that didn't happen this year. And now they're like, hey, we're just trying to get off this deal at this point because we don't want to be paying Paul George $56 million when he'll be 38 years old. Now, when you think about potentially trading Paul George, obviously it takes 2 teams to make a deal. Just because the Sixers might want to move off of him doesn't mean you can just snap your fingers and make a trade happen, right? It takes another team to be willing to give something up in return for Paul George. So what teams could possibly be interested in a Paul George trade? Well, Keith Pompey, Philadelphia Inquirer, reported back at this year's NBA trade deadline that the Hawks and Warriors both expressed interest in acquiring George ahead of the deadline. The Warriors came close to acquiring him from the Clippers last offseason via a sign-and-trade, even though sources said the Sixers are gagging at the interest. The belief around the league is he'll only get moved for a home run deal. Again, that was back at the deadline, so now things have changed a little bit. The Sixers are seemingly more open to moving off Paul George. So what teams could be interested? Well, he mentioned the Atlanta Hawks as a team that was looking into Paul George at the deadline. I think they could be interested as well as we look towards this offseason. The Warriors aren't going to be interested anymore. Obviously, they went out and traded for Jimmy Butler instead. I think a much better option for them. Then looking at some other teams, around the league, I think the Magic could be a team that makes sense. They have some salaries they could combine to get up to that Paul George level, and they could use another guy that could, create his own shot, hit that three, maybe play some defense. Again, it's all the idea of Paul George more than what he's actually been able to do. The Minnesota Timberwolves, they've been reported to have been shopping players like Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo. They try to trade for Kevin Durant, so I'm sure they're going to try to take another swing at that this offseason. If they can't pull a trade for Kevin Durant, Paul George a step below, but maybe you can get off that Julius Randle contract. Sixers take in Julius Randle, some other salaries, send Paul George to Minnesota. And then the Phoenix Suns, always an interesting team. We'll see what they do with Kevin Durant. Obviously, Kevin Durant wouldn't be involved in a Paul George trade, but Bradley Beal could be. They are rumored to be very, very interested in getting off that Bradley Beal contract because it's really hindered them in their team-building perspective. But Bradley Beal has a no-trade clause, so if he doesn't want to come to Philadelphia, he could just say no to the deal, and that's that, and then you're stuck with Paul George. Personally, I don't see why anybody, any team across the league, would want to trade for Paul George right now. Not only do you have to pay him that big salary that'll be making over the next few years until 2027, 2028. He's had his injury history. He hasn't been playing well, but then you also have to give up assets as well to go get him. So it only really makes sense for maybe another team, again, like I mentioned with the Timberwolves, who have a large salary on a player they're also trying to give up to bring in Paul George. But then if you're the Sixers, I get, wanting to get off that deal, and you're not going to get good enough value for Paul George, even what he's at right now. But do you really want just another bad contract in a swap? Maybe you get one that expires a year earlier, gives you more flexibility. But look, this team is still trying to win now and maximize the Joel Embiid era. I don't really know how far down the line Daryl Morey is looking, but clearly, according to these reports, we might have already seen Paul George play his last game in Philadelphia if he is shut down for the season. So that's the Paul George talk. We will obviously say it's going to be a very busy offseason as the Sixers try to fix their mistakes from last year. Could one of those fixes be moving off of Paul George? And coming up next, we're going to discuss Daryl Morey because he revealed that he uses AI, artificial intelligence, in some of his decision-making in the front office. And what he had to say is a little bit ridiculous, but when you look at what the Sixers have done this year, it kind of all adds up. Before we get into that, I want to tell you guys again about this great deal over at Fanatics on this 76ers polo. Was $85, but it is on sale now for just $63 in all sizes. If you like saving money, you like looking good, you might not like repping the Sixers anymore, but it is a great deal that you do not want to miss out on. It's not going to be $63 forever. Go to chatsports.com/76polo. That link will be in the comment section and the description of this video so you can take advantage of this sweet deal with our friends at Fanatics. All right, let's get right to what Daryl Morey had to say. So yesterday, Thursday, March 13th, Daryl Morey was at a conference. There was a conference about technology and artificial intelligence, and we know Daryl Morey, very analytical guy, so he was there and he was interviewing up on stage, and he was asked about him using AI and if he factors AI into his decision making, asked by Pablo Torre. And he said, we absolutely use models as a vote in any decision. I saw this and I was like, we know Daryl Morey's been an analytical guy. He always is all into the numbers and all into the data and all into the analytics. But we've never heard, and really I've never heard anyone come out and say in the NBA, yeah, we're using artificial intelligence to make decisions. So this for me, I'm not going to say I'm totally shocked that Morey does this, but it is a little surprising because this isn't something I've really ever heard of in NBA circles, especially in NBA front offices, coming from a general manager who runs a team and makes decisions. It's your job, Daryl Morey, to make these roster moves and decide the best direction for the team, and you're just using AI instead to determine the direction this team goes in. Now, Morey did clarify that it's not like he's using AI as the say-all, be-all for these decisions. The AI only gets one vote, one or two votes, he said, in potential decision making. It's not the final choice. He's not just going to the AI, typing in whatever he wants, and whatever it spits back, that's what he's doing. But it does get some say in the moves and the directions the Sixers goes in. And we don't really know how long he's been doing this, but just think about this year for a second. And think about the moves the Sixers made this past offseason. And then think about the way AI works, right? When Daryl Morey and the Sixers are using this AI to determine free agents they want to sign or trades they want to make, AI goes on previous data and things that have happened in the past and uses that data to give you an answer. Keep that in mind and look at some of these moves the Sixers made this past offseason. Signing Paul George, signing Andre Drummond, signing Eric Gordon, extending Joel Embiid. Andre Drummond and Eric Gordon, two players who have been very, very good in the past. But projecting forward, as they were getting older, you could kind of tell, they might not be at that same level they once were. But AI is just going off what they've done previously, in which they've both been very high-level players at one point in their career. Same with Paul George. AI might think, Paul George was great this past season. He's been great his whole career. Multi-time All-NBA, multi-time All-Star. It absolutely makes sense to go out and sign Paul George and give him a max deal. And then same thing with Joel Embiid. Of course, AI would think that extending Joel Embiid at that contract is a good move because he had been an MVP-level player, and he had been one of the best players in the league, but it doesn't quite factor in all these other things that, a real person making a decision would actually make. So, hearing Daryl Morey say he's using AI in his decision-making and then looking at some of these moves the Sixers have made, it kind of adds up. And partly the reason I think why the Sixers season was such a disaster, because all of those moves were somewhat questionable at the time and definitely look questionable now. Look, Daryl Morey, you're trusting the wrong AI. There's only one AI you should be listening to in Philadelphia, and that's the great Allen Iverson. I would much rather Daryl Morey bring in Allen Iverson as some kind of consultant or let Allen Iverson be a decision maker way more than I would trust Daryl Morey using artificial intelligence to decide the direction of the 76ers. You're telling me that the Sixers' next 5+ years are determined off of what artificial intelligence thinks? Hey, maybe the AI drafted Jared McCain. In that case, maybe we are giving Daryl Morey too much credit for some of these good moves. Maybe we don't even need Daryl Morey. Just let the AI run the team at this point. Who knows? Either way, Daryl Morey is saying this is crazy, and I think it went a little bit, under the radar, but to have an actual NBA GM come out and say, yeah, I use AI in my decision-making, just wild, and I wonder if this is a thing that maybe other GMs are doing that they just have not revealed to the public. So what say you? Knowing all we know about Daryl Morey, not just the AI stuff, because that's obviously just a small part of it, but with the direction this team has been in and the rumors that Bob Myers could be a candidate for this GM spot, should Daryl Morey be fired? Just give me a simple Y for yes or an N for no down in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching today's show, and we'll catch you next time here on 76ers Now.